Discover the incredible secrets of 7 ancient civilizations that completely transformed our world. Emily stood in front of her small classroom, words on the tip of her tongue, ready to launch into the epic stories of ancient civilizations that had built empires and changed the world. She had spent countless hours educating her students about the grandeur of the Aztecs, the grand philosophy of the Greeks, and the staggering accomplishments of the Egyptians. But today, it felt like the weight of a long, dimming history rested heavily on her shoulders. The empty streets of their small Midwestern town echoed the struggles of its people, and she could feel the shadows of uncertainty creep into her students' lives she fought so valiantly to inspire through history. Imagine standing before the pyramids. She began, her voice eager and bright. Can you feel the power of the pharaohs? Can you see the bustling streets where merchants traded vibrant spices and silk? Some eyes lit up, but others glazed over, distant from forces greater than themselves. The world was full of challenges: hunger, despair, and an economy that faltered. She believed with all her heart that these stories could reignite their ambition, but she was losing them. During a recent field trip to the local museum, a hidden gem in a community overshadowed by shuttered factories and faded storefronts, she stumbled upon a treasure trove. Artifacts lay dusty yet gleaming, promising to deliver lessons of resilience and triumph. As she uncovered tales of war and famine while drawing parallels to her students' lives, she knew these stories mattered. They weren't just ancient tales. They resonated deep within her students' everyday struggles. But when an announcement arrived from the school board, it felt like a gut-punch decision to cut the history program in favor of standardized testing. For Emily, it wasn't just about a job. It was about her students' identities. The thought of losing her passion sent ripples of desperation through her. She had to fight for what was more than a subject; it was a lifeline to a better future. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mobilizing her fellow teachers and concerned parents, the grassroots movement began. Emily encouraged stories, ones of resilience, hope, and defiance against the fraying fabric of their community. The meetings filled with laughter and tears as families shared their own legacies, rekindling the collective spirit of their history. Each tale wove threads of identity, and as the momentum grew, so did the faces around her, the spark of hope igniting within every heart. The pivotal school board meeting. She braced herself. The weight in the room was palpable as parents and students crowded in around the chairs. She cleared her throat, the eyes of her community fixed on her, and unleashed her plea. History shapes who we are. It tells us we can rise above. We have to look back to find our strength. Just when she felt her heart might burst, that moment hung vividly in the air. Would anyone hear her? Would they recognize the fight for their future? As cheers broke out in support, Emily's breath caught. This wasn't just a struggle for a classroom. It was a fight for their place in the world. Where would their paths lead next? The room erupted into a blend of excitement and anxiety. Parents started to stand, passionately voicing their support. "You're right, Emily. We can't let them take this from our kids," shouted Mrs. Hatch, a mother whose son had struggled in history, but had suddenly found a passion through Emily's stories. The energy was electric. Emily felt the support wrap around her like a warm blanket, infusing her with courage. It was more than a fight for the history program. It was about the future, about belief, and she was not alone. As the meeting progressed, each voice grew louder and more assured. Emily's heart swelled. She hadn't realized how many people shared her vision. The stories they told of their ancestors, of struggles and triumphs, were cutting through the air. Sharp, vivid, clear. There were stories of immigrants finding hope in a new land, of families who rallied in times of trouble, and of community members banding together to create something beautiful in the face of adversity. These were the tales that would inspire. "I remember how history saved me," One father said, his voice quavering. It got me through some dark days in my life. I want my son to feel that same power. The affirmation resonated with her. This wasn't simply about preserving academic curriculum. It was about nourishing resilience, identity, and dreams. As the clock ticked past the allotted meeting time, tension hung thick in the air. The school board members exchanged glances, perhaps gauging the tide that had shifted in their favor. With every shared story, the doubts Emily had faced wavered. She felt hope tethered to each word, casting aside the grim forecast of change. And then, just as the room began to settle, a voice echoed above the murmurs. "We need to take a vote," one of the board members proposed, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. Emily's heart raced. This wasn't just a vote. It was a chance to redefine their future. Families rallied close, forming a united front. She caught glimpses of her students Jack, who often hid behind his laughter, buzzed with newfound confidence. Mia whispered excitedly to her parents, her hands flying animatedly as she shared her vision of a future where history thrived. As the board cast their votes, Emily felt a moment suspended in time. Each heartbeat seemed too loud, drowning out the whispers of doubt and fear. Would their voices be enough to be heard? Would they secure their fight? Or were they simply standing together for a moment that could dissolve like a mirage? Then came the inevitable pause. All in favor of keeping the history program one by one, hands shot up an unbroken wave of commitment, a tide of hope washing over the room. Emily closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer. When the final decision was announced, disbelief and joy surged through her veins. The history program had been saved. The applause erupted around her like a chorus of triumph, and Emily was swept up in the embrace of her community. They had fought together and they had won. However, as she caught her breath, another thought crept into her mind. This battle was won, but the war for understanding their past and securing their future had just begun. Emily looked at her students and vowed to find a way to help them make sense of the turbulent world ahead. What stories would they create together next? The joyous celebration in the room echoed in Emily's heart as she marveled at the unity surrounding her. Parents, students, and community members were smiling, laughing, and many held each other's hands as tears of relief and joy glistened in their eyes. The emotion was palpable, a living entity in the air that connected everyone. But beneath the sheen of victory, uncertainty rippled through Emily. The excitement of saving the history program was only the beginning. What would come next? She took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the moment settle. Yet her mind raced with thoughts of how to implement those thrilling narratives into their curriculum. "I can't believe we did it," Jack said, his voice bright and full of disbelief. His enthusiasm was infectious, pulling her into the vivacity of the moment. "What's next, Miss Emily? What are we going to learn about first?" Emily smiled and tousled his hair, trying to suppress the wave of anxiety rising within her. "Well, Jack, there's a whole world of history waiting for us, and it's filled with incredible stories that shaped who we are today." Mia jumped in, her eyes wide with excitement. "Can we learn about the ancient Egyptians? Or maybe the American Revolution? I love stories about brave people." Her passion ignited a spark in the crowd, drawing curious glances and murmurs of agreement as she listened to the chatter around her. She could see the future unfolding like a fresh, blank canvas. The stories they would explore together had the potential to connect them all in ways she hadn't fully realized before. But a nagging worry loomed in the back of her mind. Would she be able to communicate these narratives effectively, particularly given the complex world her students faced outside of these walls? "Let us think about the stories that make us who we are," she suggested, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Let's choose the tales that will resonate with our own lives and inspire us to be better." As the meeting began to break up and parents started to gather their things, Emily felt a tug at her heart. She was overwhelmed with gratitude for their support, but was it enough? Would they follow through with the ongoing commitment needed to ensure history didn't just survive but thrived in her school? In that moment of doubt, Mrs. Hatch approached her, gratitude etched into every line of her face. "Thank you, Emily. You've really made a difference. We're behind you 100. "Thank you, Mrs. Hatch. But we have so much to do," Emily replied, determination punctuating her words. "It's just the beginning." As each family left, she noticed parents chatting about how they could contribute, how they could participate in bringing history alive in the school. She felt warmth spreading through her. The community was ready to help, ready to uplift each other. Still, she knew she needed a plan. How could they possibly cover the wealth of stories, the challenges, and the complexity of history in a meaningful way? Gathering her thoughts, Emily knew she must involve the students and parents more. Perhaps they could collaborate on special projects, incorporate diverse voices from their community, and explore local history. Just as she formulated these ideas, her phone buzzed silently in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A message flashed, an invitation to a history conference, including workshops on innovative teaching methods. It was a door ajar, offering potential solutions. She might just have the opportunity to discover new ways to engage her students, to understand history as a living, breathing part of their identities. But would she dare step through that door? With her heart pounding, she looked across the room at her students, their bright eyes eager for knowledge, and she realized this was a chance she couldn't pass up. They were ready, and so was she. And as she glanced around, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. One she hadn't seen in a long time, a history teacher with whom she had once shared a passion and a rivalry. What was he doing back in town? This journey was about to take unexpected turns, and Emily could hardly contain the thrill. What would their stories reveal next? And would they unite or divide them? Emily stood still for a moment, watching the mingling faces of her students and their parents. Her heart raced, not just from the recent victory but from the spark of possibility igniting within her. She had a responsibility to these kids, a promise to make history vibrant and relevant. But there, at the corner of the room, she felt an old competitive burn. The familiar figure of Mark Halstead, his arms crossed, wore a smirk that unsettled her. "What's he doing back?" she whispered under her breath, her mind flooded with memories of heated debates and shared ideas. He had a gift for rhetoric that often left Emily feeling slightly defeated. Their competitive spirit had fueled innovation in their careers, but seeing him now stirred a whirlpool of emotions. Emily shook her head, trying to dismiss her feelings. This was about the kids, not her past rivalry. She took a step toward the cluster of students, who were buzzing and vibrantly discussing what they might learn next. "Mia," she called out, intercepting the energetic chatter. "What if we create a project where you all pick a civilization to research, like the Egyptians, the Mayans, or even the ancient Greeks, and then present your findings to the class?" Jack's eyes lit up. "Like a history fair? That would be so cool. We could even dress up." "Exactly," Emily replied, excitement bubbling in her chest. She could already visualize the vibrant posters, the miniature pyramids, and the dramatic reenactments. "But how do we choose which civilization to focus on at first?" Mia asked, tilting her head with curiosity. "They're all so important." Emily paused, a thought flashing through her mind. "You know what? Let us hold a vote. Everyone can pitch an idea about why we should study a certain civilization first. We'll write down our choices and see which stories resonate the most." Before she could even finish her sentence, hands shot up. The excitement was contagious, and Emily felt it rejuvenate her. But then Mark's voice broke through the joy. He had approached, his presence imposing. "You know, if you're planning this fair, you'll have to make it about more than just fun, right? History has to have depth. You can't just glide over the facts." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I believe history can be exciting and deep, Mark. My students will learn about the complexities through their personal connections to these stories. Let us see if they can handle those complexities." Mark shot back smoothly, his confidence filling the room. With her heart racing, Emily considered her next words. This was her moment to stand her ground, not just for herself but for her students. "They can handle whatever we throw at them." "You're right. History is complex. But it's also about the human experience. It's personal and can inspire, no matter the level of difficulty." There was a moment of silence. Mark arched an eyebrow, probably sensing her determination. She could feel her students watching, their anticipation blending with the tension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded. Okay, let us see what they can do. But expect me at the fair. I'll be judging. As he stepped back, Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Her students erupted with chatter about what they would present, their enthusiasm infectious. She would not back down. The planning began to swirl around them, ideas blossoming like wildflowers. Emily didn't just feel a weight lift off her shoulders. It was as if she had been handed a torch to light the way ahead. In the weeks that followed, her classroom burst with creativity. Posters covered the walls, colorful drawings of pyramids and Roman arches appeared, and stories tumbled from eager mouths. But as excitement grew, she found herself steeped in a new worry. What if they stumbled over the complexities? Could she manage the unfolding challenges while keeping history accessible and engaging? And then that spark of doubt returned. The pressure of proving not only to Mark but to herself that she could foster a history program that mattered loomed over her. One afternoon, tracking Jack's enthusiasm as he built a tiny replica of Machu Picchu, another message pinged on her phone. The history conference was just days away, and her heart quickened with anxiety. She had the opportunity to learn, to grow, yet she couldn't help but feel her fingers trembling over the screen. What if she balanced everything: the fair, the students learning, and the pressure from Mark, only to find herself back where she started, questioning everything? As she looked at Jack, intent on his work, she couldn't help but wonder if this conference would offer her the insights she desperately needed. Would it push her forward on this journey, or lead her to further confusion? With a resolve forming in her heart, Emily whispered to herself, "You can do this." Yet doubt snaked back in one more challenge to face. But then again, perhaps embracing the chaos was part of the journey. Outside her window, dark clouds began to gather, mirroring the storm of uncertainty brewing within her. Would she find clarity, or would she sink under the pressure of expectations? A few days passed, and the history fair loomed closer, its excitement buzzing in the air like static electricity. Emily felt a growing familiar rhythm in her classroom. Children ran in and out with armfuls of projects. They were engaged, and for the first time in a while, she felt that spark she longed for, the reason she had chosen to teach. But just as pervasive was the tension gnawing at her gut. The conference was creeping up on her. Would she leave behind her students just as they were blossoming? The thought weighed heavily on her mind. Even if she found strategies to ignite their passion for history, would she be able to return with fresh ideas, or would she fade into the background? One afternoon, she found herself wandering the hallways, lost in thought. "You okay, Emily?" a colleague called out, breaking her reverie. It was Linda, a fellow teacher with a knowing smile. "Yeah, just trying to figure it all out," Emily replied, brushing a stray hair from her face. Linda raised an eyebrow. "Thinking about the conference? I get it. You'll be great, you know. You've put your heart into this fair. Your students are lucky." Emily offered a weak smile, the kind that never quite reaches her eyes. "Thanks, but what if I mess it up? What if I'm not enough? It's not about being perfect. It's about being there for them. You're already doing exceptional work. Look at how much they've learned in such a short time." Those words lingered like warmth on a chilly day. But doubt still flickered at the back of her mind, ready to pounce. As she made her way back to the classroom, the sound of laughter bubbled up from her students. They had gathered around a table, excitedly discussing their projects. Jack animatedly explained his ideas for Machu Picchu, gesturing wildly. "Can you imagine the stories these stones could tell?" he said, his eyes shining. Emily's heart softened. This was exactly what she wanted. That spark of ancient history painting a vivid picture in their minds. The joy of learning was palpable. "Hey, everyone," she called, stepping into their circle. "I just wanted to check in on how the projects are going." "Awesome," Mia chimed in. "I'm going to dress up as an Egyptian queen. It's going to be epic." "That's incredible, Mia," Emily replied, feeling her spirits lift. The mere thought of them embracing their heritage, becoming part of the story, sent a surge of warmth through her. "But, Ms. Reynolds," Jack said, furrowing his brow. What if we get something wrong? What if Mark judges us too harshly? Emily knelt beside him, her hands resting on the table. What if we made mistakes? She posed. History itself is filled with imperfections. It's about trying, learning, and growing. If you make a mistake, it's just another stepping stone. He nodded slowly, weighing her words, then grinned. Yeah, and it maybe makes the story even cooler. Before Emily could respond, the classroom door swung open. Mark strolled in, casually glancing around at the projects with that same smirk. The kids stilled briefly before continuing their work, casting quick glances at him as if gauging his reaction. Impressive display, Emily, he commented, strolling closer. I'll give you that. But remember, it's not just about the excitement, substance is key. The words stabbed through her moment of joy. I know that, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. But in order for students to learn, they must first feel connected to history. It's not just about dates and events. He looked vaguely impressed and crossed his arms. We'll see if that approach pays off at the fair. As he left, Emily's shoulders slumped. The weight of his expectations felt heavier than before. What if he was right? What if the fair didn't showcase the depth she'd envisioned? Looking around at her students' fervor, she let out a breath. They were fueled by the joy of learning, united in their adventure through history. She had to believe in them, just as they believed in her. But as relief washed over her, a new thought crept in. Would Mark's shadow dampen their enthusiasm, or could they surprise him in ways she hadn't even considered? Only time would tell, and the fair was just a breath away. The days raced by, each one marked by a mix of excitement and growing anxiety. Emily watched as the history fair approached like a storm, thrilling yet terrifying. The hustle in her classroom was infectious. Students scurried about, their laughter mingling with the sound of glue bottles and markers. Yet, no matter how loud the classroom became, a nagging whisper of doubt remained in Emily's mind. On the eve of the fair, Emily stayed late, fine-tuning her own presentation while the kids wrapped up their projects. Posters plastered with bright colors decorated the walls like banners of youth and creativity. She glanced at the clock, a twinge of fear rising in her chest. What if her students faltered? What if they stumbled over the history they had so passionately embraced? Ms. Reynolds? A soft voice broke through her thoughts. It was Mia, her eyes wide with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Yeah, Mia? Emily turned, her heart lightening at the sight of her young student. I'm just worried about our skit, Mia confessed, biting her lower lip. What if we forget our lines or mess up the dances? Emily knelt down to meet her gaze, feeling the weight of the moment. Mia, remember what we talked about? She asked softly. It's all about having fun. Everyone makes mistakes. When you make a mistake, you can just turn it into something new. Creativity comes from those moments. Mia smiled, her nerves easing just a bit. You really think so? Absolutely. Just be you and you'll shine. The reassurance made both of them relax a little. As the day turned to dusk, Emily finally closed up her materials, but an ache developed in her heart. Her students were ready to take the stage, but what if the world beyond those school walls didn't recognize their efforts? The night before the fair, Emily experienced a restless sleep. She tossed and turned, the shadows of doubt creeping in, whispering all the what-ifs that plagued her mind. She dreamt of her students wandering through the fair, their projects brilliant but overshadowed by Mark's critical eye. The hard work of their passion only met with shrugging indifference. With the dawn, Emily woke up tired but determined. She pulled on a comfortable outfit, recalling Mia's excitement, Jack's enthusiasm, the twinkle of learning in their eyes. If they believed they could do it, shouldn't she believe in them too? The gymnasium was transformed into a world of ancient civilizations. Every corner sang of stories from the past, each booth a portal filled with colored posters, artifacts crafted from recycled materials, and eager voices ready to share their knowledge. Parents wandered in, eyes wide with wonder as they stepped onto the time machine that had been prepared for them as the fair began. Emily felt proud. Jack, dressed as an Aztec warrior, wielded a cardboard shield while explaining the significance of his project to an intrigued audience. Mia glided around in her Egyptian queen costume, dancing with joy as she shared her part in the history of the Nile. But just as Emily felt the thrill of the moment, she spotted Mark lurking at the entrance, arms crossed and expression unreadable. Would he acknowledge their hard work? Her heart raced. "Ms. Reynolds, is this all you've got?" He called out with a hint of challenge, forcing her to swallow hard. But she stood taller. "This is just the beginning," she declared, looking around at her students' shining faces. "They're ready to tell their stories." As the words fell from her lips, she caught the eyes of the kids, their faces illuminated by determination. They were in this together. But just then, the atmosphere shifted. Commotion erupted across the gym. An unexpected visitor had arrived, one who would shake things up in ways Emily could never have anticipated. The gymnasium buzzed with excitement, but the arrival of an unexpected visitor sent a ripple of anxiety through the crowd. Who could it be? Emily felt her palms begin to sweat. As she turned her head to gauge the source of the commotion, a tall figure stepped into the gym, stealing the attention of everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice rang out like a bell. A charismatic man, with an infectious smile and a shock of gray hair, strolled into the room. He was dressed in a sharp suit, but wore a vibrant tie adorned with symbols of ancient cultures. Emily's heart raced. She recognized him as Dr. Jameson, a renowned historian and author. He had been invited to judge the fair but never expected he would actually come. Was he here to review her students? Heads turned, and whispers filled the air as Dr. Jameson made his way to the center of the gym. Emily felt a new kind of pressure building. This wasn't just about the kids anymore. They were going to be scrutinized by someone whose opinions truly mattered. "Wow, look at all this creativity," he exclaimed, gesturing toward the displays bursting with color. "I've seen history fairs before, but this one has a spark." A warm pride surged through Emily. She watched as her students perked up at the praise. Jack was still in character, animatedly recounting facts about the Aztec civilization while Mia twirled in the background, a regal figure illuminating the stage. But then Mark's voice cut through her euphoria. "Well, Dr. Jameson, with respect," he chimed in, stepping forward, "I think we both know that historical accuracy is key here, don't we?" The comment hung heavily in the air. Emily could see the glimmer of doubt flicker in Mia's eyes, and her heart sank. Would Mark's words overshadow their efforts? Would the joy her students felt be blunted by the harshness that sometimes accompanied high expectations? Dr. Jameson lifted an eyebrow and turned to face Mark. "Absolutely, but it's also vital to remember that history belongs to the storytellers. How we connect with the past is what makes it alive." Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, but Mark wasn't finished. "But if they miss the nuances, it can lead to misinformation," he shot back, crossing his arms defiantly. Dr. Jameson's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Ah, the beauty of history. It's messy, full of contradictions, and in that, my friend, is why we have these fairs. To explore and learn." The tension faded slightly as the audience murmured in agreement. Emily's chest swelled with gratitude for Dr. Jameson's reassurances. He shifted his attention back to her students, encouraging them to share their stories. And one by one, they stepped forward, answering questions with a newfound confidence that sent beacons of pride through Emily's heart. Suddenly, from the back of the room, a voice called out, "And what about the role of women in these civilizations?" A parent had posed a perfect question, sending Mia into a flurry of information about strong female figures in ancient Egypt. Emily couldn't help but be amazed by Mia's passion. "See?" Emily whispered to herself, proud. "This is what it's all about." Yet just as their presentation began to take flight, another figure dashed into the gym, a familiar silhouette that froze her heart. It was Steve, her former teacher and mentor, the man who had shaped her love for history, now looming amidst the chatter and chaos. With him here, Emily's world suddenly felt unbalanced. Would he support her, or was he here to critique? The atmosphere thickened, anxiety hanging in the air. She couldn't help but wonder what this moment would mean for her students, and what Steve's presence would bring to an already unfolding drama. Steve's entrance felt like a spotlight aimed directly at Emily. His face, usually a source of encouragement, now held an inscrutable expression. She caught the flicker of a frown before he shifted it away, but that small change sent her stomach swirling. "Is that Steve?" whispered Jack, nudging Emily, breaking her moment of paralysis. His excitement was palpable, contrasting with the tension weighing her down. "You think he's going to ask questions?" Emily frowned, unsure. "Maybe, but let us focus on the presentation, okay?" Jack nodded, but Emily could see the gears turning in his head, wondering about Steve's opinions. The auditorium buzzed with energy as each student took turns, but in the back of her mind, the looming presence of her mentor intensified her anxiety. Dr. Jameson continued to engage the students, weaving through their displays with genuine interest. He leaned over to Mia, who was still mid-lecture, eyes sparkling. "And what do you think makes these figures stand out in history?" Mia, encouraged by the attention, beamed. "They broke barriers. Women like Hatshepsut ruled Egypt, proving that leadership isn't limited to gender." A ripple of applause followed Mia's enthusiastic contribution. Dr. Jameson beamed at her, but Emily's eyes flicked back to Steve. He sat silently, arms crossed, his gaze fixed upon Mia, not letting any emotion escape. "Emily," he finally said, clearing his throat, drawing attention. The room quieted. "I've seen the wonderful work that your students have put in, but I can't help but wonder if you addressed the systemic issues surrounding these histories. Are the students aware of the context behind this knowledge?" He was challenging her, no doubt about it. That old feeling of wanting to prove herself bubbled up again. Emily forced herself to smile, wanting to show her students that they could stand tall, even under Steve's critical eye. "They are learning to challenge what they read and forming their opinions based on collective facts," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Steve nodded, still thoughtful. The room felt thick with anticipation, eyes darting between the two educators. Then, to her relief, Dr. Jameson jumped back in. "That's a fantastic point, Steve, but let us also celebrate how students connect personally to these figures. Isn't that what sparks interest?" His warm, engaging demeanor eased the tension, and Emily felt an ounce of victory as she turned back to her students. They were feeding off the energy, and the rhythm of their presentation resumed. Just as they began to dive deeper into the historical aspects of the exhibits, Mark spoke up again, his tone laced with skepticism. "But what if they focus too much on personal connection and lose the historical essence? Isn't that a danger?" The air crackled with a mix of approval and dissent. Emily's heart raced as she realized how fragile this moment was. She glanced across the room, taking in the pride glimmering in the eyes of her students, but also the palpable anxiety on their faces at Mark's challenge. Dr. Jameson leaned in, addressing Mark with a kind smile. "Caring about history means understanding it on multiple levels. Passion and accuracy aren't at odds. They can coexist beautifully." The crowd murmured in agreement, the atmosphere lifting slightly as Dr. Jameson began to balance the discussion. In that moment, a sense of unity enveloped the gym. Students were chiming in again, explaining why they had chosen their topics with fervor, and for a brief second, it felt like a tightly woven tapestry of voices, each contributing to the whole. But then another wave of doubt rolled in as Emily's eyes met Steve's again. He still looked skeptical, and that gnawing question in her chest grew louder. Could she truly lead these students to understand the complexities of history? Just then, Dr. Jameson turned toward the back of the gym, eyes sparkling. "Now, what about that intriguing question about the role of women? How did they influence the course of these civilizations? Would anyone like to elaborate?" Emily held her breath. Had she instilled enough confidence in her students to dive right back into the fray? And as she watched Mia raise her hand hesitantly, she couldn't shake off the sensation that everything hinged on this moment. Would Mia take the leap, or would the doubts that had crept in during the presentation hold her back? The tension was palpable, and uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud. Would they soar, or would this dream shatter right in front of them? Mia hesitated, her hand trembling slightly in the air. Emily's heart pounded as she waited, willing Mia to find her voice. The room was heavy with expectation, a palpable silence hanging over the audience like a thick fog. Emily could feel the weight of every eye on Mia, her own fears mirrored in the anxious expressions of the other students. "Come on," Emily whispered to herself, urging her silently. Finally, Mia took a deep breath and spoke. "Well, I think women like Cleopatra and Elizabeth I not only ruled but reshaped laws and policies. They brought different perspectives to leadership, showing that power doesn't just belong to men." A murmur of acknowledgement swept through the audience. Emily felt a rush of pride, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "Exactly," Dr. Jameson encouraged, his eyes sparkling with approval. "Those from the past used their positions to challenge societal norms. And it's crucial for us to remember those stories, both good and bad." As Mia continued, Emily noticed Steve's posture shift ever so slightly. His arms slowly uncrossed, revealing a glimpse of curiosity. She grasped onto that small victory, hoping it might mean he was beginning to soften his critical stance. Mark frowned, still unconvinced. "But does knowing these stories change anything today? Do our students see how these histories impact their lives?" Emily felt her stomach churn again. The room hummed with tension, students whispering among themselves as they weighed Mark's words. Could these historical lessons truly resonate? Had she done enough to connect their lives to the past? Dr. Jameson stepped in. "Absolutely. This isn't just about facts but about inspiring the next generation. History can provide invaluable lessons if we're willing to learn." The students began to nod in agreement, some voicing their thoughts about how looking at female leaders inspired them to push for change in their own communities. Emily felt a mix of relief and pride swell within her. These discussions were the lifeblood of learning. They were what she had hoped for from the beginning. But then, out of nowhere, Steve leaned forward. "That's all well and good. But are you really engaging with the most relevant issues of today? Societal structures, equity, justice, those are the heart of the struggles we face now. Can you tie this history into contemporary challenges?" Tension crackled anew. The students glanced nervously at one another, Emily's mind racing. The truth was, she hadn't fully prepared them for this line of questioning. Would they falter, or could they rise to the challenge? Mia shifted in her seat, a flicker of determination igniting in her eyes. "I think we can. If we understand what these women faced, we can see parallels in today's world. The fight for equality is ongoing. Joining movements, raising voices, their essay legacy to uphold." Applause erupted from students and faculty alike, filling the air with infectious energy. Dr. Jameson's smile widened, a perfect reflection of the evolving atmosphere. Yet, as Emily looked at Steve, that fleeting spark of satisfaction was drowned by doubt creeping in again. Did the students really grasp these connections? Was one moment of inspiration enough to ensure meaningful understanding? And just as she began to contemplate her next move, a hand shot up from the back. It was Jack, excitement plastered across his face. "What about the time of the suffragette movement? Women fought for their right to vote. That's a huge connection." The room responded, a wave of excitement echoing Jack's enthusiasm. Emily's heart raced. Could the momentum sustain itself? She could feel the tides turning, but would they crash to shore, or would they ride the waves of discussion all the way to a deeper understanding? As each student began to engage more, weaving through these concepts of history and its relevance today, Emily braced herself for what came next. Would this surge of confidence last? Or would doubts return, taking over their moment of triumph? The stakes had never been higher, and she'd have to guide them through whatever lay ahead. All eyes turned to her, waiting for direction. "Let us explore that more," she encouraged, her voice steady despite the chaos inside. "Let us dive deeper." But what they didn't know was that this journey would soon lead them toward an unexpected revelation, one that would forever change their understanding of history and its impact on their lives. Would they be ready to confront what lay beneath the surface? As the discussion ramped up, Emily felt like a conductor guiding a symphony of enthusiastic voices and eager minds. Her students, fueled by a newfound confidence, engaged in lively debates about the relevance of history in their lives today. The room was electric, filled with the vibrations of their questions and discoveries. But amidst the joyous exchanges, that familiar shadow loomed large. Steve's presence weighed heavily on her. He still watched with a critical eye, and doubt rippled through her with every thoughtful remark he made. She longed to earn his approval, to validate her approach to teaching history not just to herself, but to her students who had fought so hard to be here. "Emily," he called out, breaking through the crescendo of voices. "You're encouraging them to engage, but how can we ensure they remember this? How can we make sure this connection to history outlasts this fair?" The room fell silent. Emily felt the collective breath of her students catch in their throats. This was the moment of truth. But instead of panicking, warmth flooded her heart. They had already rekindled their passion for history. Now it was about extending that passion beyond the classroom and into their everyday lives. By sharing these stories, Emily replied confidently, her voice steady, "We empower them to be advocates for change, to see themselves as part of the continuum of history. They're not just learning facts. They're shaping their narratives to instill hope and courage." Jack, who had been quiet for a moment, jumped in, his eyes burning bright with excitement. "And we can do presentations at community events. If history matters to us, then we can teach others, too." "Yes," Mia added, glowing. "We could have workshops like the ones we learned from Dr. Jameson. We can highlight local history, share what we've done with our families." Emily's heart soared. Here was her answer: the power of community. They could become collaborators in history, sharing their discoveries and leading others to engage in the stories that shaped them. As applause erupted, Emily looked back at Steve, hoping for a glimmer of approval. Instead, there was something unexpected. His frown had turned into a smile. A nod of approval followed, and she could feel the earthquake of doubt begin to settle. Dr. Jameson interjected, "This is beautiful. Engaging with history doesn't merely end here. It continues to evolve. Commit to it, share it, and watch it multiply." Emily grinned, empowered by the synergy in the room. This was her approach all along: history as a living, breathing connection that shaped identity and agency. The day continued with presentations and interactive displays, all delivered with a spark that Emily had hoped would ignite. The students talked passionately about figures who changed the world, held discussions that analyzed flaws, and celebrated the accomplishments that paved the way for future generations. When the fair concluded, she felt overwhelmed with joy. The cheers and laughter of students as they celebrated their achievements sent waves of pride coursing through her. They weren't just students. They were equipped, inspired historians ready for the next chapters of their lives. Then, across the bustling gym, Steve approached her, a grin broader than she had ever seen. "I must say, Emily, I underestimated you. Your students surprised me today. You managed to make this about much more than history. It was a lesson in life." "What?" Emily chuckled, almost breathless. "Are you admitting defeat?" He laughed softly. "No. But I'm opening my eyes to a new dimension of teaching. You've reminded me that history isn't stagnant. It's vibrant and real." In that moment, Emily realized the journey they had all embarked on. They had fought for something far greater than a history program. They had found their voices, discovered resilience, and forged a commitment to keep history alive in their community. "And it's just the beginning," she said, a brightness sparkling in her eyes as families began to filter out of the gym, parents beaming with pride. Emily felt hope surge within her. Jack and Mia raced over, giddy with excitement. "Miss Emily, can we do more projects? Can we invite the community to learn more? Let us make a club," Jack urged. "We'll meet regularly to keep exploring history." "Yes," Emily exclaimed, wrapping them in her arms. "This is the spark we wanted. History is your story, and it's time to share it." They were ready for the future, their challenges transformed into triumphs, their doubts replaced with unwavering confidence. Emily watched as they chattered excitedly about their next ventures, and she too felt ready to guide them through the complexities of their beautiful, messy world. With her heart full, she stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. The darkness of doubt had lifted, hope and determination radiated from her. Emily understood now. She wasn't just a teacher. She was a vessel of stories that shaped them, just like those ancient civilizations had shaped the world as the last of the families left. Emily felt joy bubbling inside her, and she knew, without a doubt, that together, they would continue to forge ahead, one story at a time. Now it's your moment. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this community thriving. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Your voice matters. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support is what makes stories like these come alive.